Carol Ann Baldwin. Carol Ann answers your questions about your flowers, your veggies, your grass, your trees, even questions about your bugs. And she's only on WOCA, so don't miss Carol Ann Baldwin and You've Got a Garden each Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on WOCA The Source, 1370 a.m. and the new 96.7 FM.
Brought to you in part by Bob Wine's Nursery.
Feel the need for speed.
They are the headline makers that you've got questions for. So Evelio gets the answers in The Big Interview.
Welcome back to the Evelio Show here on 96.7 FM, 1370 AM, and worldwide on WOCA.com. Breaking news just before we went to the break of County Commissioner Stan McLean, the chairman of the commission, announcing he will be seeking re-election in 2012 for his county commission post. And moving right along on the electrifying hour, as promised at the top of the show in the rundown, we have Craig Regelbrugge. He serves as the American Nursery and Landscape Association's vice president for government relations and research. He's also the national co-chair of the Agriculture Coalition for Immigration Reform. And today we're going to be talking about E-Verify, House Resolution 2164, and the effect it's going to have on our farmers, or already is having on our farmers. And Craig came with a solution that they call Ag-Verify. Craig, how are you today?
Doing very well, Evelio. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for being with us. You know, we were chatting just before we came on the air, just to let our listeners know, whenever we talk about immigration reform, it is a hot-button issue. You know that. You're talking to people all over the country about this issue. However, when we unpack some of the emotion, there are some real effects that some of the quote-unquote solutions we're considering to immigration reform have on a private sector, and particularly on agriculture, which is very important not only in the state of Florida, but to a lot of our listeners here in North Central Florida. So I'm glad that you're able to join us. Tell me a little bit about your association and exactly what is it about E-Verify that is having such a terrible impact, I should say, on our farmers?
Yeah. Well, the coalition that I work with and represent is made up of organizations and individual farmers. Many of these are, 5, 6, 7, even 10th and 11th generation family farms all over the country. The common thread is it's the kind of farming where you need labor in order to get it done. So
Right.
It's fruit and vegetable production, nursery, greenhouse, dairying, and ranching, and so forth. The things you can't sit on a combine and harvest. And the concern, we have felt that E-Verify is sooner or later going to become the law of the land, and we do not oppose it per se. We'd like to see the kinks worked out of it, and I think good progress is being made on that. But the real issue is that if E-Verify is enacted in a vacuum, Congress, in the name of creating jobs, is actually going to be destroying jobs and going to be destroying a sector of the economy that in a state like Florida is not only important, it's essential. $8 billion industry, give or take, and it just spawns lots and lots of jobs, thousands of jobs upstream and downstream of ag that are at risk if ag does not have the labor to be able to continue to produce.
Well, Craig, let me ask you. We're talking about H.R. 2164. This is known as the Legal Workforce Act. And this is the Department of Homeland Security's database, and it is the putting in of E-Verify. And this is the electronic verification system that employers are going to be mandatory made to utilize to check on the immigration status or the citizenship status of a potential employee. A lot of this happens after they've already hired them and gotten their information. They're able to check against E-Verify. Now, you're talking about putting in E-Verify in a vacuum. So to a lot of our listeners that are concerned that they see the stories and they worry about making sure that we have control over immigration, that we don't encourage more illegal immigration. If the federal government moves forward with just E-Verify in a vacuum, is a concern that if it does not have a comprehensive reform, and we're not even talking about amnesty, we're just talking about a reform of immigration, that E-Verify alone damages farmers, and why is that? Expand a little bit more on why E-Verify in a vacuum without comprehensive reform is a problem.
Sure. There are a couple of different problems with E-Verify. I'm not going to spend most of my time on them because the one you're getting at is key. There are error rates in the databases the program relies on. That's been getting to be less and less of a problem going on. There still is a problem with documents that have a legitimate name and number on them but are actually being presented by somebody to whom that name and number don't belong.
Doesn't belong to,
clearing the system. So there is concern about identity theft being a real problem if E-Verify is made mandatory. But for us, the central concern is we know from government statistics that at least half and probably three-quarters, in fact, in Florida it might even be 80% of the labor force that's making it happen on the farms, that's, you know, the hands that feed us, literally, is here without proper immigration status. They have shown documents that appear real. The employer is obligated, if the documents appear real, to hire them. They are hired, but it's the workforce. And the reason that is that way, Evelio, I mean, we have seen Americans leaving the farm sector for other opportunities in our economy. I mean, basically ever since World War II, and we've relied very heavily and increasingly on folks who weren't born around here but have skill in agricultural work.
Sure, your migrant or your seasonal worker has found a great deal of opportunity in the agricultural community.
Exactly, and it's because Americans have moved on. Americans are better educated. I mean, back in 1960, half the population, half the males weren't graduating from high school. Now, you know, most folks are getting a much better education than that. People are looking for jobs that are more urban or suburban based. They're looking for
Craig,
jobs that are not intermittent and seasonal.
Sure, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you just answered a question. And by the way, we are blown up with responses via Facebook and Twitter, which is how we get most of our things, and a lot of emails that came in from the moment I even announced this topic. And as we've been talking, we've been getting more. And there's a common question, and that is, shouldn't we be encouraging opportunities for current American citizens? And so you were just talking about how Americans have moved on and they have higher education, that they're looking for specialized work with their specialized degrees. And even in this economic climate, I think the sentiment of a lot of our listeners is, well, in this economic climate, any job is a good job, and there's people desperate to put food on the table. Why shouldn't we avail an opportunity for those people to work out in the farms? To those folks, as you continue your answer, what do you say?
Well, first of all, agricultural work is skilled work, and most folks who have never done it end up not having the stamina or the skills. But I think the more important point is that the work that immigrant farm workers do and the work that Americans do in a place like Florida, it's very much intertwined. I mean, as a practical matter, every farm worker job, the economists that have looked at the multiplier effect, and because we're farming here, we're doing other stuff here.
That's right.
The farm is buying equipment, it's buying supplies, there's processing and packaging and all this stuff. Every farm worker job, and in Florida there are at least 100,000, crop workers working in your agriculture, supports at least 2 to perhaps as many as 3 jobs in the surrounding economy. So the deal is, if ag is starved of the labor force that is present and doing the work, it will move, and Florida's agriculture is extremely vulnerable to moving to Brazil, to moving to Mexico, even to moving to China. And what happens then is we are mass exporting the upstream, downstream jobs that depend on agriculture being here.
So we lose the multiplier, we lose the supplier, we lose the repairman of the tractor, we lose the folks that sell a lot of the supplies and things. We could even lose if the farmer's not making money, he doesn't exist, well, he's not buying a car, he's not shopping, he's not eating at the restaurant. So when you talk about the multiplier effect, and we talked a lot about that economic principle to our listeners, that's what you mean, that we lose not only those jobs, but we lose a lot more of economic investment that would have been going on.
Yeah, we don't end up sending more Americans into the fields to do intermittent and seasonal farm work. We end up exporting the off-farm jobs that they're doing. We've got examples from this year in Florida. When you guys were debating, or your legislature was debating a state law down there,
that's right.
We had a situation where an individual grower, 40% of his workers didn't show up. This is a citrus grower. They didn't show up because they were scared about the law being debated. He went to desperate measures. He went to the sheriff saying, can we have prisoners, and the whole bit. And at the end of the day, he tried this sort of halfway house program where low-risk violators who can find employment in the community can live in a halfway house instead of prison.
Sure.
And after the majority of the people that interviewed and said, oh, yeah, I'll do this, never even showed when they didn't go when the bus showed up. But the few who did, after 1 week, they opted to go back to prison.
Oh, goodness gracious. Now, wow. I've got some information from the website, SaveAmericasFood.org. That's your organization, SaveAmericasFood.org, for more information. And it says, just look at Georgia. the Peach State passed a law similar to this that was just E-Verify in a vacuum. Georgia growers, producers lose over $300 million in reduced productivity and failed crops. Is that what you're seeing in other states?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Arizona was one of the first states that passed a law like that, kind of a poster child. But the dirty little secret is it's not being enforced. So everybody thinks it's working. Well, it's actually not being enforced. Georgia was really fascinating because I think the fear that the Georgia law instilled in the migrant community, these are mostly folks who are in Florida for the winter season and then drift north as the crops change.
Sure.
And they decided to not go to Georgia. They didn't take the midnight train or any other train to Georgia. They went around Georgia, or they just stayed in Florida. And so they experienced 30 to 50% labor shortages on the onion farms and in the blueberry farms and so forth in Georgia. Huge economic hit, to the point that you have the Republican mayor of a small town, Uvalde, Georgia, who's actually sued his state government and is going crazy over the fact that his local economy, which sits in a vegetable growing area, has been devastated.
Has been devastated from it. You know, we got a lot of emails here that all say, well, what do they want? Blanket amnesty. I'm not hearing a solution. I'm hearing complaints. And in your information, you've got a solution. You call it Ag Verify. Tell me a little bit about the Ag Verify solution.
Yeah, and I mean, for a long time we have been supportive of legislative solutions that would take the status quo, which is one of illegality, and fix it, and create appropriate legal channels. The exact details have changed with the politics. I mean, obviously the politics of the current situation are considerably more conservative.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, what we are seeking is a way for experienced farm workers who are here to be able to become work authorized to continue doing the work they're already doing. I mean, they're feeding us. They know what they're doing. We need them, and they help sustain these jobs that I spoke about earlier. It doesn't necessarily have to have all kinds of promises about a long-term future, but we need a program that stabilizes the existing labor force, and then, it creates a more rational way for folks to come and go legally and leave, come when the work is here and leave when the work is not here,
right,
in the future. And I actually think if we did that and put those two things into place, we would see a substantial lessening of the demand in terms of illegal immigration, because folks are going to come, if there's a doorway, they're going to come through the doorway instead of sneaking through.
Well, it's a fascinating topic, Craig. I'm so glad that you took a few moments to kind of unpack this. I want to encourage our listeners that there's more information, including a lot of great facts and figures, information on HR 2164, quotes from a latest Christian Science Monitor op-ed. You can visit all of that at www.saveamericasfood.org. I've still got emails and things coming in. We will do our best to reply with information that we've been provided by the Save America's Food and Economy, which is among Craig's group. Craig, thank you so much for joining us. And other than that website, is there anywhere else listeners can go for more information?
No, that's where we're trying to make that as one-stop shopping as possible. Encourage folks to go there, and glad to work with you in the future as your schedule permits.
Well, thank you so much, Craig. And for all of you still emailing, go to the website. Craig and the Coalition will get you that information, and so glad to have you on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Sheriff's candidate Chris Blair, a soapbox, and then we send you off to Sean Hannity. Stay tuned to the Evelio Show.
Life's journey has many ups and downs, but you